The Zoning Commission meeting for March 13th, 2024 at 6:09 PM is now in session. Central Parish Courthouse, 607 East Worthy Street, Gonzales, Louisiana, first floor. Roll call of members. All commissioners are here with the exception of Commissioner Nasser. That's item 2. Item 3, introduction of staff. Ms. Baker.
Jamaica Banker, Zoning Secretary.
Jarius Carey, IT.
Spencer Long, Parish Attorney.
Eric Poche, Director of Planning and Development.
Lance Brock, zoning official.
Thank you very much. Item 4, the minutes. The acceptance of the minutes for the February 14th, 2024 Zoning Commission meeting. Motion by Commissioner Kluwat, second by Commissioner Unitas. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any discussion? That motion passed. Item 5, Chairman's comments. Currently, the Chairman does not have any comments. Item 6, public hearing to consider a conditional use permit for a telecommunication tower. Item A is zoning review IDPZ 3335.24 Telecad Wireless for a vertical bridge on behalf of Household of Faith Church Incorporated, located on the west side of Airline Highway, approximately 4,700 feet south of South Pepera Avenue, to request a conditional use permit to construct a new telecommunication tower. Do we have anybody here to speak on their behalf? Please come up and state your name and your representation, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Chip Lyons, 201 St. Charles Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana, here on behalf of the applicant, Vertical Bridge. With me is Michael Lavisphere, who is AT&T's Associate Director for Network Engineering for the, and that's for the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. I think my colleague Laura Carlisle was here at last month's meeting. She unfortunately had to be out of town tonight, so I wanted to come up here and attend on behalf of Vertical Bridge. As you mentioned, this is a conditional use for a telecom tower. It's a 195-foot monopole in a mixed-use zoning district on property just across the drainage canal from Household of Faith Church and school. My understanding is that at the last meeting there were a number of questions about the need for this tower in the area, and I have, I think you guys probably saw this before. We had provided, as required by the zoning code, a drawing showing a 2-mile radius around the tower and existing towers. This is where we want to go. This is a tower that AT&T is already on. This is another tower that AT&T is already on. There were a few, AT&T is also up here on St. Amant Tower and also down here by Cabela's on what they refer to as their Burnside Tower. So the need for this tower is because, and then sort of to use the term that the network engineers use, is that there is essentially a capacity overload, and that would be on the Worthy Road Tower, right? So this is another view of the existing sort of coverage based on where AT&T currently is. That's Fay Lane down here. This is where we would want to go. That's Worthy Road up there. So the red shows sort of red is actually sort of best coverage near an existing tower or antenna. That's going to show in-building coverage. Yellow generally is in vehicle, green would be outdoor. So these, the symbols that have sort of the 3 triangles, those are macro towers, large cell towers. These smaller blue dots are what are called small cells, and the parish has a small cell ordinance. So AT&T, this is Fay Lane Tower. This is St. Amant that I mentioned. That's Burnside. This is Worthy Road, and the need for the new tower here is because of the capacity, basically what's called capacity trigger, capacity offload of other towers. Essentially, and Michael's here, and I'm a lawyer, he's an engineer, he's going to explain it a lot better than I am, but essentially, it's to build out data infrastructure. Think of, an analogy is drainage. If you have 10 or 20 houses in a subdivision, you need a certain amount of drainage infrastructure. Because of the growth of the parish, data data requirements, data demands are increasing on a daily basis, and so this additional tower is to meet that additional demand. So I'm going to let Michael give a little more explanation of sort of the need for the tower and kind of go into what a capacity overload is and provide the engineering background on this.
Good evening. Michael Lavispier, 39401 Meadowbrook Avenue, Prairieville, Louisiana. As Chip mentioned, this is what we call a capacity infill site. So as you can imagine, for AT&T, building a new tower is extremely expensive. The first thing we look to do is to upgrade our existing towers as much as we can. We constantly run forecasts to look at traffic, and we look to see when something is going to exhaust. And so in this case, we're looking at the tower. We call it Worthy Road. It's a tower behind Brubacher's. We're forecasting that in the future it's going to exhaust, even with all the additional capacity upgrades we can do to it. So what we do in that case is we do a cell split, and we put a capacity infill site in between the other sites. This is, map-wise, zoning-wise, location-wise, this worked out to be the best location that we could place a tower to do offload on the site in Worthy Road site.
And I guess part of the reason for the offload is that AT&T is going to build out the equipment on an existing tower as much as possible, but from a physics perspective, essentially, there's only so much equipment that they can put on there that's going to propagate the signal a certain distance, and at some point they just can't put additional equipment on there to serve the need, and that's when they then say, okay, we now need to proceed with a new site. And in this area, from a development perspective, I think you guys have seen the site. It's drainage canal, railroad tracks, kind of tucked in the back corner. So there's nothing in the tower. There are no structures within the tower radius. So that's why they ended up selecting this particular site.
Okay, thank you all so much. At this time, we'll like to open a public hearing for this. Ms. Baker, is anybody signed up to speak?
No one signed up.
Okay, is there anybody in the office, in the audience? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. I know that we had, we definitely had a lot of stuff to digest last time. We had one of the commissioners specifically. He did, have some concern about some of the ideas and some of the things in our packet that we just wanted to digest. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, but we did talk about it to a small degree. So I know his questions, I think, were answered by your colleague. But I know, Commissioner Dumas, I want to recognize you. You have some questions on this?
No, actually, I was going to address a couple of things. First, in the interest of full disclosure, my company is in the wireless business, although I have nothing to do with this site whatsoever. And I do work for all three of the carriers, but that's neither here nor there. The one comment that I have for you is that the AT&T site that was built over at Lamar Dixon, in the end, because of the elevations and the flood level and everything, it's going to be very difficult for a co-locator to gain access into that site. So the one thing that the parish really is promoting is co-location. So we want to make sure that when this site is fully developed, that every effort is made to ensure that access to the other two potential co-locating spots are not impeded. Because the other one on Lamar Dixon is severely impeded. There's no way to get around that. You're going to have to go around that site.
Yeah, and I can address that. So this site is designed to have AT&T on there, plus room for two other carriers
Correct.
to co-locate, and the site plan shows room for their equipment cabinets on the ground. So that's definitely part of the design. From the kind of, and you probably are aware of this, from the business model perspective, right? The tower is being built by Vertical Bridge. AT&T is going to essentially be the anchor tenant. They're going on there first. So from Vertical Bridge's perspective, they have every incentive in the world to get other carriers on there because that's how they cover their cost and make a profit doing the deal. AT&T, they need AT&T there to do the project, but after that, they definitely want to bring in other carriers, and the carrier, there are multiple carriers on towers all the time, and they cooperate with each other, and they make sure that there's no interference between signals. So it's definitely in the applicant's interest to get as many carriers as
Oh,
possible
believe
on
me,
that tower.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm just raising the issue that over there,
Yeah.
floodplain triggered everything to go way up high in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, the way it was built with stairwells and what have you, access to those other two spots is severely impeded.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that tower happens to be three-legged tower rather than a monopole.
Yeah,
So
so-
I'm just saying that
Yep.
really need you to focus on that because
Sure.
we want to make sure that it is co-locatable
Yep.
for both vertical interest and for AT&T's interest.
Sure.
So,
Okay. Commissioner Miller.
So you're saying that the existing locations, you're not able to upgrade the equipment that's there now in order to cover?
I'm saying we are upgrading, but even with the upgrades we do, we're still forecasted to exhaust that capacity, even with the upgrades.
Okay, so this particular location, the new location proposed is necessary in order to fill in that gap shown on that chart that he has there?
To provide the capacity offload. These types of sites that we build, not just for coverage, but for capacity, they're very expensive to build. We don't build them unless we trigger that the sites we have today, even with all the upgrades, would still be in need of some kind of offload solution.
Okay.
if I may, Mr. Chair, there's a lot of factors, both in limitation in equipment, but also limitation in bandwidth and things like that, that impede a carrier from being able to expand the cell site beyond a certain level. There's only so much they can do. And it's a very complex process because it's imperative that the handoff from one cell tower to the other one works properly. So, yeah, believe me, this is very well accurate, that there's a limit to what they can do with the cell tower to expand its capacity. So with that, I'll just make a motion to approve, and so you guys can move forward.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dumas to approve the conditional use permit.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Villa. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any discussion? That motion passed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Item 7, staff report.
No report.
No report, okay. Item 8, moved by Commissioner Dumas. Thank you so much.